What is up, everybody? Jester here, and a little over a year ago, I made a video entitled Important Early Farms in No Man's Sky. And to this day, it's still the most popular video I have on the channel. And so I thought maybe this would be a good opportunity to maybe update that, as well as be a little more comprehensive in the coverage. We're going to talk about everything today. All the salvage data you're going to need, the number of nanites, how to find the hot spots, which ones you should be finding first, and why. There is a ton to cover. Let's get into it. The funny thing to me about this game is everybody overlooks this, but right out of the gate, no matter what difficulty you're playing, whether you're new or whether you're a seasoned player, the first thing you have to do is farm to get started in No Man's Sky. And it's going to be certain resources in a certain order. I just started a permadeath series. I'll put a card in the top right corner for that. It applies to all difficulties. But the thing that I'm telling you here is a lot of people get away from the farming and get more into exploration. But if you really want to set yourself up for the long term, farming's the way to go. So long as that's your goal and you do it right. To get started on the road to resource independence, you simply need to play through the game long enough to reach the space anomaly. Here, there's a lot of things you can interact with and a lot of things you can do, but this is going to bring us to our first big grind of the game, and that's going to be salvage data and how we're going to spend it and how many we actually need to get where we're going. Now that we've reached the construction terminal, I can go ahead and put a list of things that I think you should purchase as a beginner to get going for farming. Now, there are going to be a few caveats to this. Number one, certain items are prerequisites. You have to buy the cylindrical room to get to the straight corridor. That leads you to the glass roof corridor. That leads you to Biodome. So that's just extra stuff that you have to buy, regardless if you want to get to Biodome. Another thing people will say is, well, you're doubling up on the deep water chamber, but in all actuality, it's less pure ferrite to craft this at 180 than it is for the cylindrical room at 250, and you get glass for free. One other thing would be the antimatter reactor, but trust me, this comes up in our very first farm, so I think it's totally worth the 20 salvage data. In all, you need 137 salvage data to make the list as is, seen right here. Next up, make sure to go visit EOS, the multi-tool vendor here on the Anomaly. Here we're going to pick up the waveform recycler for 120 nanites, and then more importantly, we're going to end up picking up the survey device. This one is what we got to have to be able to scan for the different hotspots. It's pretty much useless to even think about farming if you don't have the 440 total nanites to get these things going. There's really no hard part about gathering salvage data. You just go into your analysis visor and you find whichever salvage data buried technology module is closest to you. You highlight it and you take off. When you reach your destination, just use the terrain manipulator to go ahead and mine down to it, and then it's as simple as just clicking on it. You're going to get anywhere from 1 to say 4 or 5 different salvage data. I think the difficulty kind of comes into it. Here we get 2. But the thing about it is that you just got to do this. Make sure you got plenty of oxygen and plenty of sodium in case you run into a storm. That's the main thing. It's a big grind, but it'll happen if you just stick to it. With everything purchased, we can finally start to look around for our hotspot. And to do this, just go to your analysis visor and scroll to whatever resource you're trying to find. In our case, we're looking for a gas here. And then once you get a signal, just walk up right to the middle of it. It will automatically start analyzing. I don't worry, especially early in a run, about the potential, whether it's C-Class, B, A, or S. I don't really care. I just need to get resources going. Also, take a scan around to see if there's any other resources around you, but multi-bases we'll get to later. Right now, we want to talk about the build and why oxygen is number 1 on my list. In my opinion, this base is the definition of simplicity and efficiency. It's very, very simple. I put a list here of everything that we used, what it cost on the screen here. It's not that bad. Even early game, you can pretty much get to all of this stuff. You basically just take a gas miner and you attach it to a supply depot, and we've got that supply depot actually on a piece of wood that we attached to the hollow door. So it's really simple. We also put a hollow door down. We are running solar here, so you're going to need 4 solar panels as well as 3 batteries. But on the inside, you know, it's got all the creature comforts of home, right? It's got a teleporter. We have a galactic terminal and a refiner. The antimatter reactor we'll get to in a minute. And look, the yield's not going to be great here, but like I said, this is expandable. And in the beginning, you just need to get started. This will fill up for 1,250 about every 5 hours. Why is oxygen number 1 on my list? Why am I telling you guys you should farm this above all other resources as early as you possibly can? Well, because it's one of the most powerful items in the game. You see, if you want to recharge your life support, and in the beginning your life support's not very good, you don't have any upgrades and you don't have many inventory slots to get them, life support is recharged with oxygen. If you put oxygen in a refiner, you're going to get a 1-to-1 yield directly to carbon. And carbon's going to be super useful for stuff we'll cover in just a second. But also know that oxygen has another hidden refiner trick. There are certain things that you can actually put in with oxygen that are going to give you a better yield on the item you're trying to make. Good example is the carbon itself. Carbon is usually a 2 carbon to 1 condensed carbon ratio, but with the oxygen put in there, it's 2 to 5 and 2 to 5, giving us 5 pieces of condensed carbon per 2 pieces of regular carbon. In other words, it's a better yield. I'm not going to claim to know everything when it comes to refiner, because I certainly don't. Just know that there is a ton of different recipes using oxygen and salt and some other things that will boost yields, and there's good information on that out there. I'm just not a good source for that. There's several beauties of carbon. First of all, carbon is used to recharge your mining laser. This one's pretty basic. You need to have carbon to be able to do that. You can do it with other things, but phosphorus probably isn't in your game plan right now if you're a newer player. The other thing that carbon will do is it will build pretty much all of your wooden structures. You want to put this down, it costs a certain amount of carbon. And now with the oxygen farm, you've got an endless supply of carbon to build with. But there's one more thing about carbon that's really cool. In the beginning, when you don't have a lot of resources, warp cells are a really big problem because you want to jump around to different systems and explore, and also get exosuit upgrade slots. And antimatter is not very cheap. It's 25 chromatic metal as well as 20 condensed carbon. But the reason we spent the 20 salvage data to get the antimatter reactor is because now we can take some of that carbon and charge it up, and we're getting antimatter for absolute free. That's half a warp cell, doesn't cost us anything but some basic carbon that we can grab and refine and put right in the antimatter reactor. That's pretty cool. For me, the second most important base that I build on any new run is rusted metal, and that's going to support us going forward in other things, both crafting and with building, and it's also useful in other things as well. When you put rusted metal in a refiner, it becomes ferrite dust, and ferrite dust is a very important resource for multiple reasons. When you re-refine ferrite dust, it becomes pure ferrite. This is used in a lot of your foundations and a lot of your bigger buildings. Also, you can re-refine the pure ferrite into magnetized ferrite, and that's pretty commonly used to put technologies and stuff in certain slots as well as other recipes, but it still doesn't stop there. Ferrite dust will also charge your terrain manipulator, and more importantly, it's the big ingredient when it comes down to building these bases that are going to sustain us for resources, because metal plating takes ferrite dust. Each one of those storage containers is 500 ferrite dust. It is 10 metal plating. So now you can start to see where this is benefiting us, but it still goes deeper than that. Knowing that we can make antimatter in the antimatter reactor using just carbon from our oxygen base, what if I told you that this base works in conjunction with the oxygen base? Because the other half of the warp cell is antimatter housing. That's 50 ferrite dust and 30 oxygen. So now, with just these two farms, we can actually travel the universe as we see fit. At least we can jump. We may not be able to take off and land if we don't have the launch thruster fuel, but we can definitely jump as many times as we want for absolute free. And that's why these are my two most important farms. The third most important base is the same as it was in the last video, and that is copper. Copper is extremely important, not because of copper itself, but because when it gets put in a refiner, it becomes chromatic metal. Chromatic metal is used in a ton of recipes. It's used in your base computer. It's used in your miners. It's used in your solar panels. Your antimatter recipe requires chromatic metal. That's if you don't have the antimatter reactor. So it's a really good idea to get copper under control early, because even in a pinch, you could sell some copper and make a little bit of money. It's not super lucrative, but you could if you needed to. But chromatic metal is definitely high on the list. Without a doubt, the next base I'm going to recommend could easily be higher on some people's lists, and that's going to be sodium. Sodium is used to recharge your hazard protection. And early in the game, this is really, really important because you don't have a whole lot of health, you don't have a whole lot of stamina. You're going to need that hazard protection when you run into a storm or something like that. Another thing that sodium is good for is you can refine it, of course, into sodium nitrate, and that's going to help you build things like these save beacons that can help you map out where different resources are at in your certain area around your base, and that'll make it easier to get to and find those resources when the time comes. Another big thing for sodium is that it will recharge your ship shield. And this one puts it above the other two on the list today, in my opinion, because it's just multi useful. And look, if you can stay alive longer and you can get into more fights, you're going to be able to get more milestones. You're going to have more fun with the game. And that's why sodium is my number 4. The final two bases today are pretty much interchangeable. The first of which is going to be uranium. Uranium is a really cool resource because if you have the radiation specific hazard protection, it will recharge that for you. But also, and more importantly, if you go into your starship and you look at your launch thrusters, uranium recharges those. So now you can take off from anywhere you want to. All you gotta do is stop by your uranium farm, make sure you got a little bit in your ship, and you recharge those anytime you want. The sixth and final base that I want to mention today is going to be pyrite, and it's further down the list and can probably be the last one you do because it kind of has a sole function. But that sole function's pretty big. You go to your ship and go to the pulse engine, pyrite will refuel your pulse engine for free once you have this base set up. Of course, you could shoot asteroids and you could get tritium, or you could buy it on the station, but our goal here is being completely resource independent. And another little byproduct of pyrite is if you put it in a refiner, you get extra ferrite dust. So this is going to further aid you in all that metal plating you're going to need to get these bases set up. With just these 6 bases, we have so many boxes ticked onto the things we need for survival in No Man's Sky. We have our life support taken care of, our terrain manipulator, our mining laser, we have our hazard protection, we can pulse around forever, we can take off and land wherever we please without the aid of a landing pad, and we can jump infinite times because we can make all the warp fuel we want. But what happens when you start putting all these ideas together now that we are resource independent? For me, it means a situation like this, a multi-base, where you've got more than one resource in any one location. Here, this is the Kingdom's refining hub in the Kingdom system, and I'll put a card in the top right corner for this project. It's not just creative builds, there's also great resources to be grabbed here. And in this location, we have not only rusted metal, we also have copper and oxygen. 3 of the 6 items on our list today are here in one base. And it just took some time. I had to go and find the right situation with the analysis visor, and I didn't just settle. And I think that's going to be your next incarnation, since now that you've got the original 6 bases, you've got more than you need to build everything. Just be patient and go find the situation you're looking for, and you can have beautiful builds like this that you just have one spot to go grab all kinds of stuff that you need. I didn't really expect this video to get this long, but I wanted to be very thorough about showing you guys exactly what you're going to need and how to go about getting yourself into a good resource situation, specifically because there's so many newer players that have come in since World 1, and I think this is going to be good information. It was also really nice to update my list. It pretty much stays the same, but maybe a thing or two has changed since I started that permadeath run. Now, since I didn't get to cover biodomes and plants, we're going to be doing a part 2 of this video where I'm going to show you guys fusion igniters and how to go about doing a run for that, how to set it up and craft those. Those are worth 15.6 million units a piece, and it's going to be a good moneymaker for you. And we'll show you a couple other moneymakers along the way too. And if you're into that, like the video and subscribe to the channel because I got tons more coming. Until next time, guys, thank you so much for watching, and we'll see you soon. Bye.